Hello YouTube, welcome to DC Fab. Today we're going to be working on installing the GYTR 4-point harness in my 22 RMAX2 LE. I've already installed the passenger side of the GYTR kit with the shoulder guides to keep the harness around the edge of the seat so you don't have to do the pass-through through the seat. And today I'm going to walk you through doing the other side, the driver's side, which is very similar. And we're going to cover a couple things that I've read about the rivets holding the guides in place and how they weren't working out properly, but I didn't have any problems doing it the way I did it. So I'll walk you through that. All right, guys, so as y'all know, these RMAXs have the shoulder bolster on them, and there's a little controversy on whether or not they should be left on or not. However, I feel that if you're wearing a 4-point harness and even possibly add the arm restraint, you're just as protected. I suppose this is something for like a rollover protection so your arm doesn't exit the vehicle. But in my situation, I'm going to remove them and just run the 4-point harnesses. It's a little tight in my garage. All right, we're gonna start. I'm just gonna start removing the seat. The bottoms come out real easy. If you don't know, it's just a pull up, one pin holding it, and a couple latches on the bar on the back. So we'll take the bottom of the seat out. And then I'm gonna bring you in here. There's 4 bolts holding the actual seat on. You've got this one, that one, and this one. And that's pretty much holding the seat bracket in. Once I get that out, we can remove a couple of these panels so that we can get to where the seat belts fasten in to the buggy itself, so we can replace those with the harness. Once those 4 bolts are removed, the entire frame will just come out. On the driver's side, it has sliders for seat adjustment. So once I remove the 4 seat bolts, there's 4 more bolts that hold your pair of sliders in on the driver's side only. And that one is stuck. No, I've never ridden in mud. It's a little glued in there. I really like using the grip mats. I've got the set of 3. They work really well for organizing little nuts and bolts when you're doing projects. So just letting y'all know, I really enjoy them. All right, now we've got the seat brackets out. There's a few of these little push pins in here that we need to move to get access. What I've found the best way to do it, just try to unscrew them. And if they don't come up, I just use a second screwdriver to start it a little bit, put a little tension on it, and then it will come up the rest of the way. Go ahead and remove both pieces. And there's a few of these. I'll give you a count in a minute. What happens a lot of times, or what I've experienced with this machine, is you go to take one panel off and then you realize that you have to take 2 or 3 other panels off to get to it because it overlaps everywhere. So we will see how that turns out in just a second. Sometimes they separate, it's no big deal. It's just a push clip. They'll go back together when you put them back in. The driver side GYTR 4-point harness does have the seatbelt warning provision wire built into it, which I think is a nice feature, whether you bypass it or not. I will be bypassing this just because sometimes if I'm just moving the machine off a trailer or something, I don't put the seatbelt on and I don't want to listen to the annoying chime. So I do have these bypass little loops that I'll plug into the sensor, but the GYTR does come with the actual wire to fix that, but we'll be bypassing it for this instance. All right, let's see if this panel, nope, already realized there's two more right here. This whole front panel has to come off. Like I said earlier, when you start to think it's done, as soon as you think it's done and ready to come out, there's more panels that have to be removed. I've got panel clip tools, but they don't work for this application. They're just too tight. They're just down in there. There's no gap to get the panel tool under it. So I just found that a small blade screwdriver and a larger one to unscrew seems to work best for me. That screw was already loose. That's good. You'll see when I go to put this thing back together, I use anti-seize on everything. I know it's messy, I know it gets everywhere, but this is what your factory bolts will look like. They're just corroded and start to rust from mud and splash and stuff. And so I just use anti-seize to make them come out a lot easier. I have noticed that a few of the factory hardware, this machine is practically brand new, but some of the hardware from the factory, and it's sitting out in the rain on the lot for a little while, the bolts actually start to rust a little bit, and they get seized in there pretty well. And being Allen heads, it's easy to strip them out, as we all know. So it's best to put them all back together with something that's going to prevent them from sticking and rusting in the future, which is why I use the anti-seize. And again, one more bolt has to come off just to get this panel off, so I can get that panel off. And it just goes like that, so. Let's see what we got now. And that's hung up in there on something else. I bet this entire, on the other side, I had to take this entire outer skin off. So I think I'm probably gonna have to do that again. Yep. All right, in order to take that side panel off to gain access to the other panels that I need to get to the seatbelt bracket, I've got to tilt the bed back. And so I got to tilt the spare tire first, then I'll tilt the bed back, and then I'll get you back around and we'll finish taking out the panels to get to the seatbelt. All right, there's a few 4 millimeter Allens we got to take out to get this little side panel off. I think I've already had this off before, so these feel like they're already anti-seized, which is nice. Yeah, they're coming out pretty easy. Yeah, I've already got anti-seize on these. As you can tell, it gets on everything. I think there's two more down here. I don't know who makes this little guy, but it has been the handiest little tool. Looks like it's made in the USA, which is awesome. I don't know who makes it. I used to be a tool truck guy, and it was probably from a vendor. Look at that, perfect example of the mud and stuff on the threads of bolts. So that's why I try to clean them and put anti-seize on them before I put them back in. It just sounds crunchy. Okay, I think there's one more Allen and then another 10 mil. Another 10 right there. It's like a Rubik's Cube or a snap together model. Alright, that's really all the access we need. I was going to take it off and try to clean underneath. We'll see if I can get it to come off easily. If not, maybe we'll skip this step. Let's see. Grab this here screwdriver. Okay, that's loose. I'll show you these tabs in a minute. All right, so here's the tabs. They have a little lip on them. Just a little lip, and it hooks into a gap right there. So what I do is I put my screwdriver right there and just pry it up. But what I did, I went ahead and took this off. I'm gonna go ahead and rinse the mud out from behind it while I'm in here. Look at this. And I thought it was clean. I'll get a vacuum in here and clean some of this up. All right, carrying on. This is the bolt we're after for the outboard side seatbelt bracket. And there's one just like it. Let's see if we can get these panels off now to get in here and get these off. No, that one is under that one. So this one, there's two more Allens. I've seen these things with all these panels removed, and it's insane taking all these covers off and how naked these things look without the plastic fascia all around them. That is definitely not the right order in which this was supposed to come off. This is not coming off easily, willingly. There we go. Okay, so bottom panel out. We'll set that down gently there. All right, let me get in here. Here's the seat belt. Right here is where you're gonna plug in your seat belt harness delete, or the seat belt buzzer delete is what I'm trying to say. Is right here, and this cable just comes up to a sensor inside here. You can disable it in here if you want to take these little screws out. You can just, there's a micro switch in there, you can defeat it, but it's simpler just to plug your little loop adapter into right there. All right, to unplug these, there's a little lever right here. You just push down on that, and it's that easy, see? Just kidding, let me get a pick. It's a little crusty from mud. Sometimes it helps to push it in first and then pull it out. Maybe, maybe not. There it goes. Okay, so that's unplugged. Then there are 17mm bolts right here, and then one on the outside to get your seatbelt off. And that is out. We'll set this down. Yeah, here's the second outboard bolt. Okay, and then we've got the seatbelt bracket itself, which if you'll come around the back side here. So I'm just removing the original seatbelt assembly. So there's one large bolt on the back side that goes right here. I already took it out. It's the same 17 millimeter as the seatbelt where it bolts to the chassis. And you have a Allen and another larger Allen right there. Like I said, I love this little ratchet for Allen bits. It's served me well. And I have a zip tie. I like to keep the bolts together, so I'm going to put a little zip tie on the back side here just to keep that bolt in place for storage. Okay, one more at the top. Let's see what size that bad boy is. Bigger than that. That's it right there. Let's see if my little ratchet will break that loose. Yep, sure enough. Okay, and that will complete your original seatbelt assembly. All right, here's the harness for the driver's side. What I did realize is that the GYTR harnesses are made by Beard, which is, they make really high-end suspension seats and stuff for high-end race buggies and stuff like some of the other big companies, PRP and some others, but the GYTRs are produced by Beard, which I thought was pretty neat. And it does have the seatbelt latch system, which is way more convenient and easy to use than the typical multi-latch system. Here's the alarm cable that I showed you earlier. I'm just gonna end up zip tying this up and putting the bypass plug on this, but it is included. All right, we're gonna go ahead and start by getting this up and out of the way like that. And what I'm going to do is start with the outside one, which reuses the original, one of the original bolts just to go to the factory location. I'm gonna add a little bit of blue Loctite just to keep it in. Just a little dab of blue Loctite. And then this, make sure it's not twisted up. It's oriented the way you want it. It's just gonna go on the factory location. It really won't pivot much. The way it's designed is the actual bracket holds it in pretty well, so that's a good thing. All right, let's get back to the 17. Let's go ahead and tighten that one up. Give it a little extra. Okay, now for the inboard side, same thing. Make sure it's not twisted up. You have this standoff bracket. I don't have the original harness to show you. Yeah, I do. Hold on just a second. So this has a little bit of an extension, and that's what this piece does. It just gets it up and above the panel, is all this little extra piece does. So I'm gonna go ahead and install the extension piece with the factory bolt and a little blue Loctite. Those Loctite sticks are amazing. Same thing, this has a groove where it won't really move very much, which is pretty awesome. You don't have to worry about it twisting. Okay, let's get that tightened up. A little extra. Okay, this next one, they supply this bolt, which is an Allen and a nut. And that's what's gonna actually secure the seatbelt itself to the standoff bracket. Oh, I need to put a little Loctite on that. So that does it for that. Plug my bypass plug. These are already pre-wired, just a loop. And that's in. And then we'll figure out what to do with this in just a moment once I kind of get it situated in there. I'm gonna go ahead and put all the panels back in, and then I'll get you back in here to show when I'm putting the seat frame back on and how everything lays out. They go in so much faster than they come out. That's awesome. It's a great place for storage under there. All right, we got the panels back in on the interior at least, and I'm gonna go ahead and put the seat rails back on. I'll still have access to tie this up, and I'll bring you around to the bottom side and show you that in a minute. But right now I'm gonna go ahead and get the seat sliders put back on. The torque spec for these is at least 3 bars on your battery and a little more. All right, we'll leave that as is because we got a couple modifications to do to the seat itself. What I can do though is go ahead and button up the outside panel, and yeah, we'll go from there. All right, so we're gonna move on to removing the actual shoulder bolster and installing the harness guides that bolt to the back of the seat. Good thing I wouldn't let the wife throw out the magic carpet here. It's gonna work perfect to not get things scratched up. So we're gonna start by just taking off these 3 bolts right here. They are Allen. What I've found is that they're Loctited from the factory. And so be real careful you don't strip them out, because I stripped one out on the other seat, and I ended up, just a tip I guess, is I just take my cutoff wheel and I put a flathead blade groove in it. I just cut a groove in it, and then I can go get a very large flathead and give me more leverage to get it out. So that's just a tip, but they are Loctited in, so we'll see how this one goes. The driver's seat was kind of a pain. And immediately, that one's not turning as well. That one broke loose, which is good. That's 1 for 3. I'll show you the Loctite. I don't know why they put so much Loctite on these 3 bolts. I understand they don't want the seat to come loose, but damn. Look at this. Get in there on that. Look at all the Loctite piled up on there. Definitely a little much in my opinion, but oh, I think that one's gonna go. Yep, she broke loose. Same thing, the upper bolt on the other seat was the one that gave me trouble as well. So let me get back in there on it and see if I can get it out without having to replace it or cut it, slice and dice it. Nope, it's stripped. All right, I got one more solution, one more attempt to try and fix this. All right, I'm gonna try this. Sometimes the Torx fits in pretty well to Allen's. It gets into the corners where the centers are stripped out. So I got a, for the metric 4 Allen's, I'm using a T25 and it fits into the corners really well. So we're gonna give that a last ditch effort. Nope, and it stripped out as well. So I'm gonna have to do the same thing to this one that I did to the other seat. I'm gonna cut a groove in it and then we'll get a flathead on it. All right, so here we go. I'm just gonna cut a groove in the top of it. Plus the heat from doing that will kind of maybe loosen up some of the Loctite that's in there. All right, let's give this a shot. See if I can do it without the wrench. But if you didn't know, there's a knurl or there's a hex spot on your wrench right here. If they have them, it's so you can put a wrench on it and give it a little more leverage. But oh, I think it went perfect. Gosh, that is just insanely tight. Didn't need the wrench this time. All right, I'll actually reuse that. The other one I had to booger up quite a bit. All right, so now we have the seat loose. We can do the modification to it, and then I'll get you in here and we'll be taking these brackets off. And the reason I'm taking them off here instead of what some people do, which is cutting them, you can put a plug in there so you can reinstall them. But I figure if I take the welds off here, if you ever wanted to reinstall them, you could literally just weld them back. All right, here are the wing brackets to hold the harness around your shoulders, and we're gonna be installing them. There's little cutouts on the factory seat. It's another feature I like of the using the actual Yamaha GYTR harnesses, is everything is kind of integrated and designed for it already. You're not adding things that aren't necessarily designed for it, kind of universal-ish. I like things that are designed and engineered to fit. So I'm gonna start, all I'm doing here is just centering it in this groove. You can see there's a point right here and a point right here. And I'm just gonna hold it flush with this edge on this angle, and I'm gonna try to center it in there. And I'm gonna do one hole first, and I don't have my tools. I'll be right back. All right, we're gonna try this again. Let me get this centered and somewhat flush. And I'm gonna start one hole right here. I'm using a 3/16 drill bit, which is the perfect size for the rivet. Now, I've heard people say that the rivets are a little troublesome, but if you use the right size drill bit and you use a decent tool, I believe they'll turn out pretty well. The passenger seat turned out really good. So what I like to do is go ahead and start without drilling or marking all your holes. I like to just go ahead and start the first rivet, and that way you know it's in place and you're not having something move around on you. Just like that, rivet installed. So once the first rivet's set, that helps it stay in alignment. I'll just move to the second hole. And you don't want to go all the way through the front side of your seat, so be careful. Just make sure it's cleaned out. I put the rivet in the gun, make sure it seats it all the way down. And second rivet installed. Third rivet. Again, install it into the rivet gun. Push it down. And that's that. I'm gonna go ahead and get the second bracket installed, and I'll bring you back in when we start on the shoulder. All right, so I got both brackets installed. As you can see, they're kind of centered in the grooves, matching this line right here as close as possible. And here's how it'll look when it's in the vehicle. This just holds your strap over your shoulders without doing the cut through, which I really like this feature. Okay, get this out of the way. All right, so now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna show you with this Sharpie kind of where I'm gonna cut. You don't wanna cut straight in like this, because what you'll end up doing is eating into this pipe, which I want this tube right here to not have any grooves, cuts, or jeopardize the integrity of it. So what I'm going to try to do is come in somewhat parallel with this pipe, like if you can imagine like this, and I'm going to come in like this. I keep calling it a pipe and a tube. It's definitely a tube, but I'm going to come in and try to cut in without going past this surface and cut into this piece if I have to, because like I said, if you wanted to reinstall them, you can always weld it back on and you're not messing with the integrity of this. So I'm going to show you. I'm going to try to cut right in there at about the angle of the pin. I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom, and I'm going to come in here and do the same thing across these right here and just whittle away on these factory welds. And again, I'm not worried about removing all the weld material. I'll come back and get that off in a minute with the flap disc, but I just want to get this piece removed for start. There we go. Beautiful. Okay, so I know that looks rough, but honestly, if you wanted to put this back on, you can grind those clean and you could weld this right back on, no problems whatsoever. And if you look here, trying to see, I didn't really get into the frame. I left material, I did get into it a little bit right there, but I'm gonna get these welds ground down fairly smooth and very minimally into the original tube right here, which is good. So. All right, I wanted to bring y'all in and show y'all a little grinding tip that someone taught me a long time ago. To get a really good finish where you don't see grinding marks after you paint, if you come in close to the weld here, you can see that there's the weld in the center, and then there's another weld here. And I left them a little tall still, and the reason I know is because you can see exactly where the weld was. But in order to get that down perfectly smooth without leaving the hard flat lines on there, is you want to use the grinding wheel across this surface right here, like where my finger is, and you want to move and let just nothing but the weight of the grinding wheel and move like this. Don't put an edge on it, don't push down, don't go this direction, but if you just use that surface right there and you do like this right here and go work back and forth across the surface, you'll see that it's taken very minimal material and it'll leave a perfectly round, smooth finish. Very, very little grinding marks. So I'll bring you in and let you see this when it's done. All right, as you can see, you can barely see where the weld was still with that little line. I'm gonna leave that. It also gives me a reference point if I ever do wanna put this thing back together. I know that that's kind of a reference, but you can't feel any ridges or hard grind lines in this anymore. So I can feel the transition where the paint was ground away, but other than that, using that technique with about that part of the wheel works really well. So aside from my crappy paint job, you can see right in here is where I ground. And by using that grinding technique, you can't even see a grind mark in there. Maybe if I can get it to focus. There you go. And the one on the bottom side, you can see that a little more. All right, so we got the seat back in, frame's painted. We're gonna move on to now is the upper harness mount for the roll cage. So these are the two pieces. This will go on the inside. Yamaha has these factory drilled holes right here. There's a bolt that goes through the center of this, and that's what keeps it from rotating this way. And then you have your normal 4 clamshell bolts just to keep it together. So what we're gonna start with is getting this oriented correctly. I'm gonna go ahead and get this bolt. I've got some anti-seize on it, and we're gonna get that put in there and oriented correctly. There's a little powder coating in the holes here, but so that'll go through there, and you'll see it'll poke through this side, and it goes through there, and that's just what keeps it aligned for rotating, to stop it from rotating. Right there is where that goes. And it's not actually threaded into the rollover system, the roll cage. It's just, again, just to keep it from rotating. So that'll stay there. And then I'm going to get the correct size. This one right here. Correct size Allen for these. And we will start attaching the back piece. Careful, you don't want to cross thread these. Sometimes that powder coat will throw the bolt off a little bit. Just make sure it's started by hand a couple turns before you put your wrench on it and just hog it down. Anti-seize. All right, that's pretty good. Now we're gonna go ahead and unlace this and get the upper bar straps connected to the mount. Just gonna pull it out of the loop. Make sure there's no twists. Make sure everything's fine, oriented the way it should. I'm gonna come through the back side first. And I'm gonna go back through the loop, through the front, and that'll need some adjustment. And once it's adjusted, I'll come back a final time just to keep the tab locked in. But for now, we'll just do that. Same thing for the other side. Make sure there are adjustment instructions that are included with the kit, and we will certainly review those and make these final adjustments for the common people that are going to be riding in here, like myself as the driver and my camera crew for the passenger seat. It's easier than it looks. So that's basically the system. I'll bring you back in just a minute, and I'm gonna get the seat bottom put in, and I'll get the seat bottom put in, and then I'll bring you in for some fitment in just a minute. All right, guys, we're all wrapped up here. I've got everything fit nice. Everything's very comfortable. There are no hot spots. It seems to be very high quality. I have the seat adjusted, the steering wheel adjusted, and I made my strap adjustments. Everything is great. So thanks again for tuning into DC Fab, my first video. And you might have noticed some other things I've done to this machine. I will have some follow-up videos on some subjects that are around the property as well. Like I have a Hemi swapped 90 Dakota I'm in progress of working on. So thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.